And thanks for joining us on the show that dives headfirst into all things people, power, and politics. This is an election night edition of The Pulse. We're glad you're along for the ride. I'm Ruth Paraj. We are all over the primary election tonight. Oakland University political science professor and chair Peter Trombor is live with us in studio. Journalists Sam Robinson and Malachi Barrett and Detroit News columnist Karen Dumas are all ready to weigh in. But hey, we know that results are what you're looking for, so toss that phone aside and let's go out of that refresh mode on your phone. We'll take it from here. This is where things stand in the mayoral primary as of this moment. The Associated Press has called one of the winners of the mayoral race, Council President Mary Sheffield, as you see over here, 34,000 votes, 52%. Pastor Solomon Kinlock, 11,000 votes, 17%. Look how close this is, though. Santil Jenkins, City Council, remember, she worked at the Heat and Warmth Fund, has a CEO experience. She says she was a person for the job. 9,000 votes, 15% of the vote. And James Craig, the former police chief, with 6% of the vote. As you can tell, it's this race that's going to be so interesting to watch as those final numbers are counted. As for the Detroit City Council at-large seat, let's take a look at some of those numbers right now. Councilwoman Mary Waters, 27,000 votes, 35% of the vote. Coleman A. Young, the second. We have 33%, 25,000 votes, just a couple thousand below Mary Waters. Janae Ayers over here, 13%, and James Harris, 7% of the vote. You know what? There's another one that so many of you are watching. Even if you don't live in Hamtramck, it has been one that has really caught a lot of headlines. The Hamtramck mayor, 4 candidates tonight hoping to succeed Mayor Amer Ghalib, but only 2 will move forward. Adam Al-Harbi and Mahout Mahmoud. You'll see their names right here. They'll face off in the general election. You'll see the numbers pretty stark even between Adam and Mahout, 54 to 29%. Khan and Mr. Bangladesh, by the way, that is his name, first name Mr. Bangladesh, 3%, 102 votes. That's just the tip of the iceberg. If there's a race you're interested in that you didn't see here, all you have to do is scan the QR code right there at the bottom of your screen. That'll take you right to the fox2detroit.com result page right there. So you just got to take your phone, go ahead and snapshot it. We told you to toss your phone aside, go pick it up wherever you hit it, bring it back, and go look at those results as you continue to watch what we're talking about here tonight, which has everything to do with Detroit. Fox 2's Dave Kinchin was at the Sheffield campaign watch party, and he joins us now live. This is obviously a resounding victory for Mary Sheffield.
Yeah, really a huge victory for the City Council President of Detroit. I'm going to give you a live look at the celebration still going here. A lot of people living their lives like it's golden, if you know that hip-hop tune out there on Detroit hip-hop radio. Anyway, that's about as hip as I can get, but these people are in a much hipper mood right now because, of course, their candidate, Mary Sheffield, is the top vote getter, winning one of the 2 spots in this primary, August 5th primary, setting the stage for history for Mary Sheffield to possibly, if she wins 91 days from now, to be the first black woman ever to be elected mayor of the city of Detroit. We'll go to some video earlier. You know, she was talking about how, and by the way, if you've been with us all night, you watched it right here live, Mary Sheffield's first live interview talking about, reacting to her victory. She said it's been really a campaign focused on the neighborhoods, meeting the people where they are. Listen in to Mary Sheffield talking about this victory.
Detroit for a phenomenal turnout, for trusting in me to continue to lead our city. The work continues, and so we're going to continue to connect over this last 91 days of the campaign to ensure that this city moves forward in a positive direction.
So a lot of history that could be made here. Again, there's a battle for that second spot, but if Mary Sheffield does go on to win that general election 91 days from now, she said the party's tonight, tomorrow, they roll up their sleeves, they get busy back at that campaign trail. She would, of course, be the first black woman ever elected mayor of Detroit, and there's a growing list of first-time black women elected for the first time as mayors of major American cities. London Breed, the mayor of San Francisco, first black woman elected mayor in San Francisco. Sharon Sales Belton, the first black mayor elected in Minneapolis. I used to work with her when I was with, we're live on TV. First black mayor elected of Minneapolis. I used to work with her when I was with the National League of Cities. And also Kim Janey, the first black mayor to serve on an interim basis for the city of Boston. So this will be a big moment for the city of Detroit. If it happens, of course, course, there is a general election coming up. There is another candidate, either Jenkins or Reverend Kinlock, so we'll see how that all shapes up. We'll send it back to you, Roop.
All right, Dave Kinchin for us live tonight. We're talking about a victory for Mary Sheffield. Thank you for that report. And right now on Fox2Detroit.com, we're asking you how important primary elections are to you in general on a scale of 1 to 10. If you want to weigh in, just scan the QR code on your right of your screen there. So far, the average vote is just about a 7, but most of you are telling us a 10 because the primary leads to the general. How important is it to kind of whittle this down? Many of you say it's critically important. We always say all politics are local, and there's an obvious trickle-down effect from national politics to local races. Oakland University Political Science Chair Dr. Peter Trombor joins our live coverage here on The Pulse, and it's always good to see you, Dr. Trombor. Thanks for joining us here.
Thanks for having me.
Election night is what I think all of us live for because we are watching democracy in action, and we're watching people who get to decide who gets to lead the city as they move forward. When you look at the numbers, no big surprises here, right? Mary Sheffield was a front runner in fundraising and polling, and she came out at the top.
Yeah, I think that wasn't a surprise at all. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Kinlock and Jenkins plays out. My hunch was going to be that Kinlock has the support, not just of his own congregation, but he's got sort of ministerial kind of associations behind him as well, and their ability to tap into their congregations, especially with the changes in the IRS rules that allow churches now to specifically endorse candidates. I think Kinlock will be a beneficiary of that, but we'll have to see as the final count comes in. I think the bigger story, really, and the story of municipal elections in the city of Detroit for the last 25 years has been the collapse of turnout.
Yeah.
25 years or so ago, you would get about a 40% turnout in a mayoral race. And today, what are we? Somewhere less than 20%.
Yeah, I mean,
17, 18%.
about 17, 18%. Right. What do you attribute to that?
I think there is a feeling in much of the city that government simply isn't responsive, and as a consequence, they don't feel any need to participate, especially as we get outside of some of the core neighborhoods that have been sort of stable and prosperous over the years. Candidates don't go out to these far-flung parts of the city. Services are hard for residents in those parts of the city to access. And I think as a consequence of that, they sort of look and say, why should I participate when it doesn't matter because nothing seems to change?
Could it be that things aren't changing, but not for the worse? The fact that in the last 12 years, things have consistently, for many people at least, gotten better. And for 12 years, no one had to go decide, it seemed, whether or not a massive change was needed.
I don't think it's... Is there a level of complacency because the last 12 years under Duggan have been pretty solid? Perhaps. That doesn't explain the 25-year trend.
Sure.
Right? I think this disconnect has been long in the making, and it's going to take a very long time to change that, to turn that kind of thing around. And I just don't anticipate seeing that. If
each of these had their own episodes and you were doing an episode on Santil Jenkins, you'd say the CEO. And if you're doing an episode, let's say, on Pastor Kinlock, it'd be the pastor. And it's this kind of like, there's these positions that they hold that represent something. What do you think in this case the CEO versus the pastor represents?
I think if we simply took it on a level of stereotype, right? You think a pastor, you think someone who's connected to the lives of their flock, someone who has their sort of finger on the pulse of what is important to everyday people, and we think of CEOs as sort of disconnected, sitting in some office somewhere where they are making big decisions but aren't necessarily down in the trenches themselves. And I don't know if that's a fair characterization of Santil Jenkins and her career, either on city council or in her role in the nonprofit world, right?
Especially because it was nonprofits with the Heat and Warmth Fund that she was trying to get out there. That's interesting. When you frame this, you're trying to think from the voters' point of view as well. And so many of the voters that Charlie Langton talked to today basically said, I didn't feel compelled to vote. Right. I need someone to tell me why voting is important. And perhaps voter education is a piece in this as well. Don't you think? We had one woman who actually literally said on television, I didn't know how to vote. And instead of insulting that or snubbing our noses at that, we need to dive into that and say why.
I think you're right. There has been a significant decline in what I would call civic education over the last 40 years in this country. And it has come along with deterioration in the media landscape, where there are fewer and fewer media outlets that people can turn to that they find or they believe to be trustworthy. The fragmentation in media has made it more difficult to reach to reach the kind of audience that you used to be able to reach by being on a program like this or being on any of the other sort of network programs. And so I think a consequence of all of those things is there's less information. There's less sense that people perceive of their own personal stake in the decisions that government is making, and they feel like because of those disconnections, it's pointless to participate.
Well, you've charged us with the responsibility because we know that Detroiters watch Fox 2, and our people who are watching, we want to make sure that they have the tools. And so moving forward, as we head towards the general election, perhaps a few more stories where we actually say, here's how you vote, here's how it works. Yeah. Last question for you. I wanted you to frame this from a point of view of what happened with the whole following of President Donald Trump and the disenfranchised voter, the folks who said, what about me? And then the people in Detroit who may be thinking the same thing. Is there like a parallel story there?
I'm not sure that Trump voters really, they may have perceived themselves as disenfranchised, but I don't think that was the reality of their situation in a lot of cases. I do think that in a city the size of Detroit, with the challenges that it has faced, that there are in fact parts of the city that really have been left behind. And that perception isn't just something that people feel, it's something they see every day. And they ask themselves, at what point are all the shiny new things that we keep touting as the renaissance of Detroit, at what point are those things gonna make an appearance where I live, where my kids go to school, where I want to go and be able to, buy my groceries or get a meal out or whatever. And I think that that's what people need to see.
Dr. Peter Trombor, it's always good to have you here on The Pulse and kind of lend us your perspective. We'll make sure that we count on you again to come back as we continue to talk about this down the line.
Sounds good.
Thanks for your time here today. Our live coverage of the August primary continues up to the break with Sam Robinson and Malachi Barrett, two journalists who have their hands on the pulse as we continue on this special edition of The Pulse on election night. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Pulse. Joining us now to weigh in on the races for Detroit Mayor and City Council, Sam Robinson with Detroit 1 Million and Malachi Barrett with Bridge Detroit. Good to see you both. Thanks for joining us here on The Pulse.
Our pleasure.
All right, big question. Any surprises tonight when it comes to the numbers?
The big surprise is how big the lead Mary Sheffield has commanded is. Polling had her around 35%. Other campaigns had thought maybe that was her ceiling, and that's clearly not the case. She's well over 50% at this point.
Yeah, we were told to expect a tight race at the 2 spot. That's playing out currently, and exactly what we expect. Solomon Kinloch to have a slight edge. We were told that not all of the congregation of the Triumph Church lives in Detroit. I thought to myself, if you half that and say it's 20,000, then half that number to say maybe some of the members won't vote for him, seems like it's pretty clear. I mean, he's at
11, 12,000.
Yeah, so much less than the 20% figure that both of those campaigns, Santil Jenkins and Solomon Kinloch, both expected.
And so we talk about Santil Jenkins and Solomon Kinloch in the race between them, but if we really talk about a race where Mary Sheffield is taking on any one of them, it's kind of interesting because Mary Sheffield's father, of course, is Reverend Horace Sheffield. And there is a huge following around the Sheffield name from the church community as well. This proves faith-based voting is very important in big cities like Detroit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is why I think you're seeing Solomon have that edge over Santil as well. I mean, if you look at them on paper, one of the main differences in their organizations is that Kinloch has a lot more resources to draw on. He was endorsed by the UAW. He's got his church congregation working on behalf of him. He had 2 or 3 dozen pastors come out and endorse him. Mary had a large number of pastors come out and endorse her as well.
It's interesting, despite the experience that we heard from some in Santil's camp. I mean, they told us, Santil is like Mary Sheffield with 30 plus years of experience. Solomon Kinloch going to voters and saying, direct action has been my life's work, which has been a part of Santil's work. Seems to have resonated with not just some of the members of his church, but voters at large.
Well, because we were literally just showing people these city council election races. I know not everyone who's watching right now is deeply affected by the districts in city council, but there are many people who are. So what's the takeaway from the city council race?
We got some surprises in the city council in some races. D5, District 5 is Mary Sheffield's council district. She's been representing there for over a decade. Renata Miller, the UAW-backed, she's a UAW retiree. She had the most flushed out campaign of all those candidates, but surprising to see Willie Burton. He was a fiery, progressive, Board of Police Commissioner. It looks like it's going to be those two candidates. And then in D7, Karen Whitsett, she's of course a state representative who has broken with Democrats on a number of issues. And we have a Democratic socialist, that's Denzel McCampbell. It looks like those two are going to make it to the general.
Let's talk about what the presidential election may have taught us about what voters want and what voters think. When we think a little bit about what people take for granted, the Kamala Harris camp on a national level took for granted that many people who they thought would vote for them would, and they didn't. Was there a similar mistake being made here at home?
I think there was a lot of acknowledgement of the frustration that voters had that we didn't really see during the presidential race. All of the candidates, including Mary Sheffield, who looks at herself and has pitched herself as a bridge between what has been built, the foundation under Mike Duggan. She's going to carry that baton moving forward. Even she will say that growth, it hasn't reached everybody. There's a lot of work to do. And I think, obviously Kinloch is trying to tap into that by saying I'm an outsider and the status quo has failed people. But that's the difference. I mean, the Kamala campaign kind of told voters that things were going great.
The night of Mary's launch, we looked at each other and said, her being willing to say, this is how I'm going to be different than Duggan was a break from Kamala's campaign. Some of the members of Kamala's campaign staff that worked in Michigan are working for Mary Sheffield currently.
Well, and I understand that. And many people in the Kamala Harris camp knew that the biggest mistake that Harris made was going on national television and saying, I wouldn't do anything differently than Joe Biden. And so perhaps these lessons can be translated. I want to talk about money for a moment, because this is really important. When we look at the coffers and we look at $800,000+ that Mary Sheffield had, the money does matter, and you do have to follow the money to know how someone's going to do. And this proved to be true tonight.
Yeah, she's a strong fundraiser. She's brought in a lot of money, not only from the business community, philanthropic community, but also neighborhood organizers. I think of Lance Woods, who runs Run Detroit, Run 313, a very large organization of people who are like getting out in the community to run around. People like that are also backing her campaign. She had a lot of small dollar donors. A lot of the money in this race has come from outside the community, though. I think that's something people are really keyed into, that the suburbs are funding this race. $2 million was spent between all of the candidates, too. And it's interesting what that
Not just the suburbs, but California, Texas, Florida, New York.
Atlanta,
we saw
Georgia,
large donations from
Miami.
Samuel L. Jackson and Cookie Johnson. Eric Alexander.
Samuel L. Jackson getting involved with the race here in Detroit.
We expect that's because of some sort of connection between himself and Greg Mathis has been championing Mary's campaign and actually going out knocking on doors with her. So she does have a bit of star power. We see today at the watch party, Tate Crispy on stage. So she's been connecting with folks with large platforms.
Large platforms. One of the guys with the largest platforms is a guy named Mayor Mike Duggan, who currently has a job that all of these folks want. Talk for a moment about if Mayor Mike Duggan was to make an endorsement, how big and how important would that be?
I think a lot of people are looking to that as kind of a decision, a kingmaker type of moment in this race. He voted today. We didn't hear who he decided to vote for. He's not endorsing this race. Maybe he will in the general. I mean, it seems like on paper he's got a better relationship with Mary Sheffield than perhaps Solomon Kinloch or Jenkins, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Isn't it important for someone like Mayor Mike Duggan, who literally walked away from the Democratic Party to, instead of endorse, stand steady in his own campaign as an independent and say, this whole party system that we're looking at isn't quite working out for people?
It's a nonpartisan race here in the city.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be the only one not making endorsements. We've been waiting for city council members that voted Mary Sheffield into that position to be council president. None of them so far have come out and endorsed a candidate in this race.
Endorsements are so interesting to me, because when you look at even President Trump and some of the midterm elections and some of the other elections in the House and the Senate seats, even when President Trump, such a powerful, charismatic guy, like him or not, makes an endorsement, it doesn't mean that someone's going to win. So we should know that that's true locally as well, right?
I think the general electorate probably doesn't look too much to endorsements, but it is important when we talk about the money, about the organizing strength. It's not just a check this, they like this person, there's resources that come along with that. So it helps fuel a campaign.
And finally, let's take a look at voter turnout for a moment. This has been disappointing to a lot of people. You heard the professor before you came on talk about how it's gone from like 40%, down to 10 to 20%. Your thoughts on that, Sam?
We've had conversations. I talked to Jocelyn Benson, who talked about the potential for consolidating elections, holding municipal elections on the same dates as presidential elections. In cities that have done that across the country, they've seen instant turnout increases. I mean, go look at what just happened in New York City, right? A part of it, to Janice Winfrey's point, when she tells us on the 350 Terrace rooftop.
There's an inspiring candidate in that
We
race.
need candidates to come out there and tell people why they should be voting. A lot of the candidates in this race have said similar, you know, they've had same things to say. Tale of Two Neighborhoods. Continuity is very different. So I do think we are going to see two very stark, contrasting campaigns going forward.
We say often in journalism, tell me why I should care, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. I don't know why I should care about this. Well, here's why you should care. Candidates have to do the same thing, and if they don't, they're not going to win. And that challenge is now in earnest on the shoulders of two people, Santil Jenkins and Kinloch as well. We'll be watching carefully. Thank you so much, Malachi. Thank you, Sam, for your time here on The Pulse. Always good to see you. Up next, Detroit News columnist Karen Dumas with her take on the issues, the city, and the next mayor. Why she thinks some people are just missing the story here. Why Detroit may not care. Next. It is People, Power, and Politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show on this busy election night. This is The Pulse. Joining us now with her take on the race for Detroit Mayor and City Council, Karen Dumas. She's a Detroit News columnist and co-host of the No BS News Hour. She also worked very, very closely with Mayor Bing on his administration years ago. And that's how you and I got to know each other so many years ago. Me not calling your phone up saying, hey, let's go talk about the water or about the bankruptcy or whatever it was. Bottom line right now, the next man or woman who gets this job is going to have a tremendous responsibility. But Karen, you always come from a skeptical viewpoint, and you wish more people did. This isn't all rainbows and butterflies. There are some issues in Detroit that you see that you think that perhaps these other candidates aren't talking about. What are those issues?
Well, I think the biggest issue is that the reality for people that live in Detroit doesn't necessarily mirror the narrative that we've been pushed or convinced exist. For all practical purposes, we've not realized any new residents. Sure, people have moved in, but we've also had 80,000 people move out. We've got pension obligation payments. We have no new industry, no new revenue, no new income. We have some realities that have to be faced. More beyond just the catchphrases of affordable housing. You know, once upon a time, it was safe streets, trash pickup, and lights on. So now we've got the trash being picked up very well, I might add. The street lights are on, and so now we're moving to affordable housing and public safety. So we have to move beyond the catchphrases and start to understand the socioeconomic realities that continue to keep a lot of our residents stagnated.
Is Detroit better off after Mayor Duggan 12 years later than it was when he found it?
I think, and I say this all the time, I think the biggest thing that Mike Duggan did for the city of Detroit was to change the perception of the city. And there's value in that because there were people that did not give Detroit a chance. They, you know, said, okay, let's go down, let's see it, and it's not as bad. The people aren't as bad. But the reality is that we've been sold a facade, and that facade is going to start to unravel in the next administration.
What are you most worried about in terms of someone coming in and getting the keys from one mayoral administration to the next? You've been there. You've seen that happen when Bing took over. What are the challenges that people aren't talking about?
Well, the challenges will be a continuity in terms or a connectivity so that there is a smooth and a seamless transition. You know, there are some things that were done, information that has to be shared and transferred. But my bigger concern is that, you know, from, again, public safety is going to start to unravel in the financial side of the city. So, you know, those are two major things that have to happen.
Why is it important for people to care more deeply about elections in the city of Detroit? We've seen all night long the turnout has not been what so many wanted. Why is that?
Well, I think voter apathy has been fueled by two things. One, we don't hear anything about voter education or voter awareness beyond 30 days before an election.
What does that mean to you when you hear those words, voter awareness?
Voter awareness, I think people have become disconnected from the value and the outcome of voting. And so I think, you know, like today, my voting poll was closed. Why did I not know that before I drove over there and it was closed? I had to get out, look at this little sign, you know, those kinds of things. But that type of communication and information should be out all the time. You know, the other side of that is that I think people have not really realized a return on their investment that is a vote. They consistently see the same people, they go out, they vote, they hear promises, and the progress doesn't match that. And I think they're just tired.
15 seconds left. Job one for the next person who, after this primary, goes to the general and wins this race.
I think the first thing is that they're going to have to paint a realistic picture for Detroiters. I think we know that things aren't perfect. You know, don't blow smoke up our behinds. Tell us what we have to do and encourage bridge building so everybody can roll up their sleeves and we can work there together.
We love having you on The Pulse. Karen,
Thank
come
you.
join us again sometime soon.
will do that.
Karen Dumas,
Thank you.
great to see you.
Thank
What a
you.
pleasure. That is The Pulse on this election night. As always, we thank you so much for being with us. Remember, you can always get the latest results online on fox2detroit.com, and our next newscast starts at 4 a.m. Thanks for being with us.
Yo.